Thinking Out Loud with Dave Palmer. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and I hope you have your thinking cap on because Dave Palmer is going to be talking to us about some of these teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas related to the passion and death of Jesus. But without further ado, welcome, Dave. Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. How are you?
As best as I can be. Doing well for this Holy Week. So far, so good. But you sent me the questions a little bit beforehand, and they're very interesting because I can't remember the last time I thought about these questions. So it's going to be very interesting, and I'm really excited for those who are listening. So maybe you just want to open it up and talk more about what he thought related to his passion.
Yeah, well, thanks, Keith. Yeah. I think, one of the things when we talk about Aquinas, and first of all, I was very happy to hear that Aquinas Communications in Iowa is the newest affiliate that's coming on with Morning Joy. And it made me think, what is it about Aquinas in particular, 750 years after he lived and died, are so many people naming their apostolates after Aquinas, and why is there such an interest in him? And I think a couple of things is, first of all, Aquinas was probably the greatest teacher that the Catholic Church has ever had. And also, St. Thomas Aquinas had an intense love of Jesus Christ. And, there was a story at the end of his life where he was seen levitating, and he had an ecstatic encounter with Jesus Christ. And Jesus said something to the effect of, "Thomas, you have written well of me. What reward would you like?" And Thomas, rather than, asking for some kind of riches or something like that, he said, "Nothing but thee, my Lord." So even in the end of his life, the reward he wanted was Jesus Christ. And I think the other thing about Aquinas is that he asked a lot of questions. And this is what he did in the Summa Theologia. And I think as we are into Holy Week now, we're approaching Good Friday and Easter Sunday, a lot of us are just trying to find a way to go deeper and to just kind of get deeper into the Paschal mystery of what's going on this week. And so Thomas asked the question about, what exactly happened when Jesus died, okay? Because you have Jesus Christ, who, as we know, one nature, one essence, but he did, two natures. He had human nature, he had divine nature, one essence and one person. And so when that person dies, what exactly happens? And is he still a human being? Is he still a man? And that's one of the questions that he asks here is, was he a man? And Thomas says, no, he was not a man, because the definition of a human being is an intact soul and body at the same time. So his soul and his body would have separated at death, and so he no longer was a human being, okay? So, and even in the Summa, he talks about some of the errant beliefs about this. He talks about one guy, Hugh of St. Victor, who said that really just to have a soul is to be a human being. You don't really have to have a body. And I think that plays into some of the confusion we have today, because some people think, the body is not that significant and the body is not really speaking a language as far as gender and that kind of thing. And so it's very, very significant. And St. Thomas also asked the question about, we hear in the Apostles' Creed that Jesus descended into hell. And what exactly does that mean? I mean, for him to descend into hell, and who did he visit? What did he do during that time? As his corpse was lying in the tomb, and he goes, he's kind of doing things during that time. And what exactly was he doing? And according to St. Thomas Aquinas, he was pretty busy, because he was visiting the people in the hell of the lost. He was visiting people in purgatory, and he also was visiting what's called the Holy Fathers, or the just. But he was doing it in different ways. In some ways through his effect, and in some ways through his essence. So that's a little complicated. I won't get into too much of it, but it's pretty interesting if you, like I said, you want to go a little deeper and you're trying to find out what exactly does this have, what happens when the God-man dies on Good Friday. There's always that moment when we realize that, okay, Jesus has now died, he's in the tomb, he's going to rise again. What was he doing this time? Well, these are the questions that St. Thomas Aquinas asks a lot of as a very curious person asking questions about Jesus Christ, who he had a mad love for. And so that's what I think is the value of asking these kind of questions.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously in the Apostles' Creed, he descended into hell. But one of the questions that I thought was really interesting, I never really thought of, was did Jesus continue to be a man or human being during the 3 days he was dead?
Yeah, and that's again what he asks, and he did not continue to be a human being. So because there was a separation of the soul and the body, he was not a human being. One of the other interesting things was he said, okay, whether the Godhead was separated from the flesh when Christ died. Okay, so again, something we may not think about, but you have this corpse lying in the tomb. Did that corpse, the flesh, still have the Godhead in it? And St. Thomas Aquinas says yes, because, and I think this applies to us, because he said that God is only removed through something by fault. Okay, so when the hypostatic union came, the incarnation, when God took on human flesh, he was fully God, and so since there was no fault in Jesus Christ, there would have been no reason why the Godhead would have been removed from the flesh at all. So you could say, when you see these images of Christ lying in the tomb, that was still a divine flesh, okay, which is interesting. And one other thing, Keith, I'll mention, there's always been this question about, okay, if Christ died on a Friday and he rose on a Sunday, and we say that he was, dead for 3 days, well, that doesn't seem like 3 days. Friday, afternoon or evening until Sunday morning, how is that 3 days? And Thomas answers this question whether Christ was in the tomb only 1 day and 2 nights. And again, this goes back to the whole idea of, what does this represent? And he said that the 2 nights represent a twofold death, the death of the soul and the death of the body. Okay, so the 2 nights, Friday night and Saturday night, are the death of the soul and the death of the body, which he delivered us from, okay? And the 1 day on Saturday represented his charity, okay, because there was no fault, there was no sin for him. And so, it's something, again, we can reflect on this week as you go into Friday night and then Saturday and Sunday. There's a reason and there's a representation and something that actually means something those 2 nights in the 1 day. Okay, so that might clear up a little of the confusion some people may have.
That's funny. I feel like I might have thought about that many years ago, but until you mentioned it, I was like, wow, I had no idea. Yeah, I didn't. Now thinking about it, is it really 3 days? But the way that you break it down really helped with that. So thank you.
Yeah. And I've heard that question asked a whole lot. So it's, if you take Friday as a part of a Friday, all Saturday and part of Sunday, you have your 3 days. But then again, like I said, Aquinas is able to kind of break it down between 2 nights and 1 day, and each of those has a reason. There's another question, if I have time for it, Tim, where he says, were we delivered from the devil's power through Christ's passion? Because some people may say, okay, Jesus suffered, he died, he rose again, but why am I still feeling like the devil is tempting me? The kind of things that, Adam and Debbie talk about all the time on The Next Right Thing, and also the spirit world. Why was the devil not entirely conquered? Why is he still able to harass me? And, it's a very legitimate question, right? And so I'll just read real quickly. Thomas says, by Christ's passion, man was delivered from the devil's power insofar as the passion is the cause of the forgiveness of sins. It must be said that Christ's passion freed us from the devil's power inasmuch as it reconciled us with God. God so permitting it, the devil can still tempt man's soul and harass their bodies, yet we were given the remedy. So what is the remedy for us? Of course, the normal remedy for us would be the sanctifying grace of the sacrament of reconciliation. So really what Christ did by the Passion is conquer the devil, but he's still allowed to harass us. But what we do is we have a remedy. Okay, we can always turn to Christ, but that doesn't mean that the devil has been entirely chained and can still harass us. And so I think that's something that people can kind of contemplate and think about this week during Passion Week.
Yeah, all of this we can certainly contemplate. And this is kind of not off topic, but it's something that Debbie and Adam were talking a little bit earlier about Judas. Did St. Thomas Aquinas mention Judas at all in any of his writings in the Summa?
Yeah, I was anticipating that question because I was hearing that segment a moment ago, and I know he did. I didn't prepare anything for this segment about it. But I know that if the Summa is so big that there had to have been something, probably, in fact, like on teaching on despair, despair being, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the three greatest sins a person can commit. You can have unbelief in God, you can hate God, and you can despair of his goodness and everlasting life. Okay, and I think I'm just guessing that he would have used Judas as an example of despair. But beyond that, I'm not sure exactly what he taught about him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Despair. That's one of the few, I don't know if you'd call it a feeling or ways that a lot of Catholics probably express and not really realize that that's not a good thing to do because it's basically hopelessness. Are there any other, before we end this, are there any other questions that you get? You mentioned you're also kind of a teacher. It's the minute that we have left. Any other questions that pop up about Jesus?
Well, I think the big thing is just trying to figure out what exactly it means to have this hypostatic union, okay? And it's, we're complicated enough. We've got the intellect, the will, the passions. There's a lot going on with the human person, and we desire to get to heaven, okay? And that's why I am just absolutely fascinated with the person of Jesus Christ, because he had it all in one person. He had the Godhead, he had humanity, and whereas we have humanity and we have everything that goes with being human, and we desire union with God, and so that desire is really manifest in the person of Jesus Christ. So I think that's probably the thing that I get asked about, is just like, what does it mean for Jesus to be both God and man? And there's a lot of unpacking that St. Thomas does in the Summa.
And thank you for unpacking it during this segment of Thinking Out Loud with yourself, Dave Palmer. Thank you so much. We can catch you also on Back to the Father, Fridays at 1 p.m. Central on GRN Online YouTube. Hey, we're coming up on a break. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming up, as well as talking with Dr. Nicole Morris coming up after this break, and so much more. So stay tuned for Morning Joy, for more Morning Joy, where truth matters. We'll see you right after this break. You're not going to want to miss the second half.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.